day, everybody, and happy All Hallows Eve. I'm here with the man who was literally born in a cornfield and soaked in his own mother's blood, or so they say. Your mother was a goat, yes?
Yes. Well, half goat. She was a half human, half goat hybrid with 7 heads, and that was a thing that actually happened in reality.
Yes, obviously I have Milan Jeftic1992, or as I like to say, one of the strangest friends I ever had. And actually, people are so excited when you end up on my channel, Milan. Do you know that? People get excited when you're on my channel.
Sexually excited or just regular excited?
I wouldn't say. I can't speak for everyone.
Alright, well. Yes, I am glad to be here on Deadpool's channel.
And the topic the topic we are going to be talking about is horror elements in superhero comics. Now, yes, there are horror comics out there, but I'm talking about when you have the Marvel and DC superheroes have a horror story in it. Now, Milan, you did a review on Batman the Killing Joke, and you made the defense that it was a horror comic. Care to elaborate?
Oh, yeah. Well, the Killing Joke is, in the way that it's told and the way it's drawn and presented, is very much an 80s slasher movie without any actual deaths, except one. The story is, it's more of a psychodrama, but it's drawn in such a way that it's basically taking the reader through a funhouse of terror through the mind of the Joker. And it is a horror story. I mean, the things that the Joker does to people are horrifying on their very own. But it just has the whole beats of the horror story. The monster comes, brutally kills a young girl.
Doesn't kill her, he cripples her. He doesn't kill her, he cripples her.
I know, that's what I said. I know, he cripples a girl. And it just goes through all the beats of a traditional horror story. Of course, it's a lot more intellectually inclined, a lot more cerebral, but it's a genuine horror story. Sure, there's no actual monsters except the humankind, but yeah, I gotta say it's a horror story. That's just my opinion.
Very well. Yeah. And there are some other comics out there that you could qualify as horror, like superhero horror stories. And I'm not talking about Hellboy or 30 Days of Night or Hack Slash. I'm talking about when you have characters like Superman or Batman or Spider-Man encounter, horror, have horror-based stories in them. A good...
Yeah, the thing with go right, you mind if I say something?
Oh, go ahead.
The thing with that is superheroes being such an extremely... It's a basic superhero comic, no matter what, how dark it is or how supernatural the character might be. A basic superhero like Spider-Man or Superman or whatever, the light-hearted daytime superheroes, they get the superhero as a concept in general is so open to any sort of genre that yes, you can have a Spider-Man story where he fights a werewolf or Dracula that actually happened. And yeah, it doesn't stand out because with superheroes you literally can tell any story, and of course the genre of horror will eventually come up because you need story material, and why not pick on the darker things?
Yes. Another good example, at least in my opinion, is a Spider-Man story we all know called The Birth of Venom. And if you don't say that Venom comes off as a horror-type character in his first appearance, I would say nay. Because he pretty much, when Venom is pretty much in the background after, Eddie Brock becomes Venom, and he's battling the supervillain Chance. Spider-Man is getting constantly, he nearly gets pushed over into a train, he's getting stalked, and he doesn't know where it's coming from, and when he finally confronts Venom, we also get a traumatizing scene with Venom scaring nearly the life out of Mary Jane. And it's also someone that Spider-Man can't see. Let's face it, Eddie Brock's first appearance as Venom is actually kind of terrifying.
It is. I mean, my first was from the 90s cartoon. I remember watching, used to have it on VHS back in Moscow. And I used to watch it just over and over again. And when I came to Australia, I got it on DVD, and it was just one of my favorite episodes. You see, most people don't really see Venom as a great villain, at least not the older fans. I feel that Venom is a very popular hero, but he's not really taken seriously by the older fellows, so the older people in the fandom. But I mean, Venom is a rather terrifying creature. I mean, he's literally your past sins and an evil version of your skin walking around wanting to kill you out of this weird kind of lover's quarrel. I mean, and I love, like, my first introduction to him was the 90s cartoon, and he was rather terrifying there, because the most terrifying part was when he goes to see Aunt May as Freddie Brock, and he's like, Peter comes home, and he just sees Freddie Brock. Eddie Brock just sitting there having tea with Aunt May, and they were like chatting nicely, and they're like, oh, what a nice man this Eddie Brock is. And Eddie's like, okay, I'll see you later, Pete. And as he passes Peter, he's like, I could have killed her any time. Just know this. And it's just like, just having this person stalk you, this person that you can't see, and you can't sense, and you can't really fight because he's so strong. I mean, it's not that he doesn't really do anything all that bad. He just kind of fucks around with Peter. It's the threat of, killing his family that's more terrifying than the actual need.
Yeah, and that's what you also get. And that's what you get in the actual comic as well. Another Spider-Man story you could say is arguably a horror story, kind of. And this one Dan, Tori GNR1 spoke of, was Kraven's Last Hunt.
Oh yeah.
Kraven's Last Hunt, you could say. Kraven in here is downright crazy, and it's a psychological piece as well. And it has Spider-Man being buried alive. And
I mean, Kraven's Last Hunt is just one of those things that's just like, when a certain person is so obsessed about you that they're willing to take your place and just prove to you that they can be a better you than you are. That's another thing. Spider-Man has this weird kind of trend of villains wanting to wear his skin, which is kind of creepy in its own way. Not literally wanting to skin Spider-Man alive and wear his skin, but just wear his identity. And it's kind of creepy because Kraven kind of wins over Spider-Man. He shows that he's better, could be a better Spider-Man than Spider-Man. Because it's, in the story, they fight Kraven releases a creature called Vermin, a half-human, half-rat hybrid, into the sewers. A creature that Spider-Man could only take down with Captain America's help, who just couldn't take him down by himself. And so Kraven just kind of drugged Spider-Man, buried him alive, as you mentioned, put on his black suit, and just went out and got, Vermin himself. And it's just like, that's kind of admirable in a weird kind of crazy person way. And another little detail that I love about the story, the actual comic book story, is that Kraven he's fucking old. He's like in his 70s, but he's kept himself young through like jungle, like herbs and stuff. It's like through voodoo or whatever. And it's just like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
He was around. He was a little kid while the revolution was going on. That's cray. So.
Yeah. But anyway, the thing is like, how would you? The big question is, it's how do you balance the superhero element with the horror element? That's kind of the big thing.
The thing with that is, I mean, this with horror in general. Mainly the stuff of the horror comes from your protagonist being powerless to resist the unstoppable force of the monster. But with the superheroes, they fight back against the monster's threats all the time. So it's you can have a horror story in a superhero comic, but it's a tough act to do, because you can have like a Spider-Man fighting the Wolfman, and it's kind of fun because, hey, Spider-Man fighting the Wolfman. But, you see...
And you don't really... The thing is that I'm not really saying, you don't really need a supervillain for... you don't really need a monster. You could just use an everyday old supervillain. Like, of course, like I said, Venom, Kraven, and even the Joker.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, you gotta put the hero in a place of vulnerability. You gotta present the threat, like the hero... The villain has to be something that the hero can't get his hands on. It has to be somewhat intangible in its threat. Because the hero can punch, I don't know, a brick wall and it can turn to dust or whatever. But the monster, the villain has to have a certain level of creativity in its creepiness. He has to be creepy for a person who can punch mountains into dust.
Yes. And also, the antagonist has to be... The antagonist has to be something that the supervillain or the monster or something, or the villain in general in the story, has to be something that, like you said, the superhero has to feel, a vulnerability, or something that they can't explain or basically fight. Another good point of this is Batman Gothic, a Grant Morrison and Klaus Janson story that involved Bruce encountering a man called Mr. Whisper, who turned out to be his former headmaster at his academy when he was a child, who was very abusive and beat him and whatnot. And it turned out that he sold his soul to the devil, and it's a very horrible background of he was once a monk who later on sold his soul to Satan and turned the entire convent into Satanists. And when a group of nuns came to stay the night, they beat, murdered, and raped them all. This Mr. Whisper, and it's something that Batman can't really battle. It's something Batman has no faith in, the supernatural, and it's something that actually terrifies him because this person traumatized him as a child.
That's the thing. The story is actually really, like, Gothic is a really great story, and it's just...
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorite Batman stories.
Oh yeah, it's Grant Morrison. You gotta love him, motherfucker. But that's the thing. It's interesting to see the supernatural can be used as kind of a hacky, bad writer's way out of the problem. But if the supernatural is used to an effect of just like this is like you can't Sherlock Holmes your way out of it. I mean, it's fun to have a detective hero like Batman trying to make sense of this unexplainable and almost unknowable terror. And of course, you can bring in the psychological aspect of child abuse. A little child abuse here and there always helps the story along. But horror is one of those things that if you don't do it well, it can at least be fun as a concept. Like, hey, scary monsters fighting. Or if you do it well, you can actually get horror. You can actually get true terror. That feeling of being watched, being followed, terror is a hard thing to pull off.
Yeah, and I don't want to point to a lot of Batman comics. That's the thing. I don't want to point to a lot of Batman comics, but there are so many Batman stories that you could say are horror stories.
Yeah, because Batman he's dressed up like a demon. Batman kind of focuses on the subconscious mind, dark subconscious mind. I mean, most of his villains most of his villains you can put into any sort of slasher movie. I mean, Scarecrow, the Joker, Two-Face, they're all funhouse horror monsters. They're just like Batman is the obvious choice for horror. But it's interesting when you take heroes like Superman, for example, whose horror isn't really their strong suit. I mean, I remember reading this one comic. It was a 90s comic. It's where Superman and Robin, the Jim Drake Robin, teamed up to fight vampires in Metropolis. And it was my first, the art was just freaking gorgeous. One of the first comics that I've ever read. And it's just seeing how, Superman's vulnerability to magic. It was just fun seeing how, basically, there was a really tense scene at the very end where Superman was like hypnotized, and the vampire, the head one, kind of made one of his minions bite down on Superman's neck. Well, not really bite down, but it's like a slow motion thing of the fangs slowly going to Superman's neck. And if you think about it, just as a vampire Superman would be terrifying. But Robin saved him, and yada yada yada, happy ending all around. But it was just a really kind of interesting, it was an interesting comparison seeing Superman fight a vampire. This was more of a Batman story, but with Superman.
Well, the thing is that you have, again, like you said earlier, you have to balance with superhero comics when you're doing a horror-based element. You have to balance the, when can it be funny and when can it not. I'm talking like straight up, ooh, this is kind of creepy, and this is something the hero can't fight his way out of. And I'm not talking like, yes, there are horror-based heroes like Swamp Thing, Ghost Rider, the Demon, John Constantine, but I'm talking like the characters who don't delve into that. Or, stories that kind of revolve around, that don't have a monster in it, but it's a villain who's doing very creepy things.
That's the thing, that's the fun contrast between not dark, quote-unquote, heroes. Heroes like Superman, Spider-Man, I don't know, Blue Beetle or whatever. These heroes who are not usually used to fighting the darker elements of the world or fiction. I mean, seeing Batman punch a werewolf is like, it's kind of every day. It's like, he does this all the time. But seeing someone like Spider-Man take on something creepy, it's unsettling because it's not you're not used to this.
Exactly. Well, basically, having Spider-Man encounter something, or someone like Superman or Batman, something that they can't really combat is something interesting. Like, again, you could even use a supervillain. Like I said with Venom, is that Venom's story comes off like a slasher in a horror movie. Just coming at
Slasher. Yeah, well, that's the thing. The slasher, he does have elements of the slasher in it, but more of a Hitchcockian, like, mindfuck villain would be interesting.
Yeah. Another villain that I think you could have done as a horror-based story is Sabretooth.
Oh yeah, Sabretooth is a scary motherfucker.
Well, the thing is with Sabretooth, is that this is a guy who antagonizes Wolverine and attacks him every day on his birthday. And there was one comic, and this was a child's comic from the Wolverine First Class. That was a comic that was, it was a comic about Wolverine and a young Kitty Pryde working together. And it had the first appearance of Sabretooth, and it was Kitty giving him a birthday at this really fancy restaurant with Mariko. And what happens is that Wolverine doesn't want his birthday found out because, well, Sabretooth comes. And Sabretooth actually, you don't see him throughout most of the comic. It's just him talking to Wolverine off-panel, telling him after he kidnaps Kitty and Mariko, he's like, you tell me which one he's like, tell me which one you want to keep and I'll take the other one and you'll never see her again. It's not until the end of the comic when Sabretooth shows himself, and I'm like, this isn't a kid's comic.
Yeah, I mean, like, basically, in a Kitty comic, you got a guy threatening, like, hey, pick one you don't want me to rape. It's creepy. Creepy motherfucker.
Yeah. So I think you could... I think you could do all... I'm pretty sure it's out there somewhere. I mean, there was a what-if story with Sabretooth where Sabretooth broke out into the mansion and killed several X-Men. It was in a what-if story.
That's creepy because that's the whole Venom-like threat of violence. See, the threat of violence. See, once the character actually performs the violence in a comic book story, it becomes a revenge tale. It's something tangible. Like if the character is a bad person, he can make people bleed. But that's the thing. If you can incorporate the intangible factors of villainy and just have like the threat of violence, like I will hurt you, not now, not tomorrow, but soon. That's creepy. It's just like it's the unknowable. It's like, when will the threat come?
Yeah, that's the thing. And I don't know, is there any, like, Carnage is a perfect example of horror-based But all you see is fun slasher stuff with Carnage. Like, fun...
Yeah, Carnage isn't really... Yeah, Carnage isn't really subtle. He's more like, I'm gonna wear your skin. I'm gonna wear your skin and eat your children. You know, he's very obvious. It's not subtle. He's just completely out in the open with his, I'm a freak. Oh, fuck up.
Yeah. He's kind of like the... He's kind of like the Marilyn Manson of the Spider-Man villains. He's all shock value.
Oh, totally. That's a good comparison, actually. The Marilyn Manson of the Marvel universe.
Of the Marvel villains.
Like
he's all there for shock value.
Oh, totally.
Well, I mean Spider-Man villains, because I'm pretty sure there are some creepy other villains, but I don't know. Are there any other villains you'd like, super villains you'd like to see do that you could pull off a horror story with, or a horror type story?
There was a Thor story a while back during the Siege days. It was with Doctor Doom. I think like Loki betrayed Asgard, obviously, or Doctor Doom kidnapped a bunch of villagers from Asgard and kind of experimented on them, and so you just see Thor and the three yeomen kind of saying, "Give us back the people, Captain. Give us back the people, ye dastardly villain." And Doctor Doom just standing there with his arm crossed, and he just stands aside and he says, "Very well." And just these hideously experimented on people, with people with arms and legs missing, replaced by robotics and shit, jump out and fight the yeoman. And Thor's like, "Oh my god, this man's a monster." And he's just, it's not him, I think it's one of Thor's friends going, "Oh, I have to kill all these innocent people because what can I do?" Doom has twisted them to the point that they're no longer human. And it's just that's pretty fucked up, because Doctor Doom did some pretty fucking crazy things. It's some fucking
Wait a minute, I think I know what you're talking about. Is this from the JMS run?
Oh yeah, that's from the JMS run.
Ah.
It's that is some goddamn, who was that Nazi?
The Red Skull.
That experimented on people. Not the Red Skull.
Oh, you're talking about real life Nazi. Joseph Goebbels? I think.
Oh, Himmler.
Yeah, Himmler.
Goebbels.
Goebbels or Himmler?
Himmler. No, it's Himmler. Joseph Goebbels, he was the propagandist. Himmler was the actual scientist, I believe.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
I think so.
Yeah, Himmler fucking, he did some horrible things. He carved pieces of brains out of people and just let them walk around with that piece missing, just to see what they would do. And you gotta say, that actually, terrible things done, but for Himmler, he gave us
Well,
a
let's
lot
go back
of,
to supervillains.
Yeah, but still, what he did.
Yeah, I know what he did. It's bad.
Doom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. But I'm just the comparison between Doctor Doom and Himmler was just in that one issue was just terrifying, because Doctor Doom has the added bonus of being an evil scientist, a dictator, and a wizard. I mean, you got the whole shebang right there.
Yeah. I feel like it's kind of underused. I feel like there's a great sadness in me, because Nightmare could be easily used as a horror-based villain, because it's the Lord of Dreams. And no one plays with that.
Nightmare.
What? It's the Lord of Dreams, and
with you.
yeah, you can play with that, and some people do, but it's not to the extent of being scary. It's more like, oh, I can overcome this now.
Yeah.
You could do some serious Inception shit with that.
Yeah, you could do some Freddy Krueger shit right there. I mean, him, besides Mephisto being one of Doctor Strange's enemies, I mean, even his visuals is this gaunt green figure in a horse. That's just a creepy image, and it's just Doctor Strange is an obvious a horror-based superhero who fights horror monsters and whatever. But Nightmare, yes, you can do some really interesting things, and they just don't do anything with them.
Not to my knowledge, at least. Yeah, not to my knowledge, at least. Yeah.
It's weird. I think it'd be an obvious choice.
Yeah. You'd think so. And I think, again, I don't want to say Batman villains because they've done horror-based stuff with the Batman villains at one point or another. At all of them, in fact, all of them at one point or another have some scary-based stories. So I'm thinking a little outside the box here. So, and I'm looking at a lot of Marvel.
Yeah.
And
Marvel.
I think, like I said, Sabretooth, Nightmare, and again, Nightmare's an obvious choice, but they've never really done anything, like some Nightmare on Elm Street and Inception stuff. And again, there could be stories out there, I've just never read them. Anyway.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's some classic Doctor Strange books that I'm sure, there's some pretty good Nightmare stuff there if you check it out. But, yeah, I mean, who else is there? Let's see. There was a Kevin Smith story with Mysterio.
Oh, that Daredevil story, right?
Cat.
Wait.
Not Daredevil. It was a Spider-Man story. It was a Black Cat Spider-Man story. It's basically, it went into very dark places with sexual abuse and rape and whatever. But it went to really dark places, but, handled them with a lot of, class, but still made them scary and unsettling. I mean, the new the new Mysterio is a rather terrifying individual because he's just so damaged. I mean, he has the power to teleport things, but he's also so fucking insane.
And that's another one I think you can do some horror-based stuff, and I think there has been, but never to a high extent, is Mysterio. This is a guy who can warp your sense of reality, and not even have superpowers.
Dude, I mean, this is a huge spoiler warning. So, for Old Man Logan.
I know, dude, we know the story. Mysterio makes all the X-Men. I mean, he tricks Wolverine to killing all the X-Men. We know.
Yeah, that's some fucking. Yeah, that is. When I first read that, I'm like, oh shit. Like, part of me just like when I was reading Old Man Logan, I was like, no way Wolverine would just give up being Wolverine. Like, what could have happened to make him this? And it's just like, you always you think it would be some sort of like silly like action movie cliche, but Mark Millar, say what you will about the guy, but when he's good, he's good. And it's just like, when you see what Wolverine has done, it's just like, Jesus Christ. I mean, he's just like, I'm like, I am speechless. I'm like, what the? Like, that is some dark shit. That is like some fucking pitch black, Heart of Darkness stuff right there.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. Terrifying.
Yeah. And again, Mysterio is someone you could, and there's probably been stories out there. It's just I've never read them, but or they're maybe that not that good. But Mysterio is someone who doesn't even have superpowers, and he can warp your sense of reality.
Yeah. I mean, but I think if they I'm not sure if the old Mysterios he's resurrected now. I don't know.
Yeah, he's back. He's come back.
All right. Well, I don't know. How did he get back, by the way?
I don't know.
Magic. A wizard did it. There we go. A wizard did it.
Plot convenience. Plot convenience, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, bloody right. Plot convenience. I mean, it's just like, it doesn't matter now, but it's just, you can't play around with Mysterio but if they kind of take away, because he's kind of become a jokey, fun villain. That was his original inception of just being this out-of-work actor that's just kind of a hack. And so he turned to supervillain to make the dough. But, you could do some interesting things with him.
Yeah. I think we've gone off topic and just said, hey, what villain could be scary and whatnot, so before we go into full-on rant mode, yeah, so that's our video of just saying what could, what horror, so we're going to ask you guys, what horror-based elements do you think are needed for a superhero comic, not like supernatural comics, but a superhero and supervillain story to be like horror, or the characters encountering something they can't explain. Stories like that. How would you do it, and how would you go around it, and how do you want to see it done? And also let us know what villains do you think have the right stuff to become, have a creepy story around them.
It's funny. There's a lot of fun, creepy Captain America stories, and there was a story where they go into a German village that's been basically swamped with vampires, and there's Captain America fighting werewolves. It's not an old idea, and it's the thing, because Captain America, you can do a lot of scary things, and they have done a lot of creepy things with Captain America, and yeah. So just that fun espionage. It's a blending of genres that I like. That whole espionage deal, but with horror.
But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'd like to thank my friend Milan Jeftic for joining me on this video.
It's been fun, and I enjoyed myself very much.
Alright, and yeah, we will see you guys later, and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.